This artwork is a 1985 print by graphic artist Chips Mackinolty. It marks a significant and symbolic moment within the political and legal history surrounding title to Uluru and Kata. In 1979, the Commonwealth Government declared Uluru and Kata a national park under the Commonwealth National Parks and Wildlife Act, excluding these areas from Aboriginal title. The area's Indigenous Council and the Central Land Council lobbied the Prime Minister and the Aboriginal Affairs Minister to amend the Act so as to allow traditional owners claim over the land. The Commonwealth and Northern Territory Council responded with offers and counter-offers to the effect of allowing the traditional owners a role in management but no legal control. The traditional owners did not accept. A stalemate continued until the federal government finally announced in 1983 that title for Uluru and Kata would be returned to the traditional owners. Uluru and Kata would be leased to the Australian Parks and Wildlife Service and run under a system of joint management with a board of management comprising largely of Indigenous people of the area. This artwork was endorsed by some of the 150 traditional owners of the Uluru and Kata area and produced for the 1985 handover ceremony. There, at the base of Uluru, the Governor-General handed over the title deeds to the traditional owners of the land.
Looking at the screen print, a salient choice by Mackinolty is his foremost placement of the Indigenous Pitjantjatjara text, followed by an English translation. The 1985 handover ceremony was performed in English by Governor-General Ninian Stephen, with land rights campaigner Yami Lester standing by and translating English into Pitjantjatjara. Mackinolty's use of an Indigenous language first, in larger text, followed by its English translation, is markedly subversive. Not only does it ensure that the Indigenous people of the Uluru and Kata area understand the text of the screen print, it subverts a long-accepted paradigm of English as the authoritative form of communication. Indeed, even most other screen print graphic posters produced for Indigenous audiences of the time employed the English language as the mode of textual communication. The English text, "You are on Aboriginal land," was earlier adopted in a widespread poster by Mary McMahon. Mackinolty's choice of the Pitjantjatjara text first and English text second is significant. It foregrounds the gaze of an Indigenous audience at an event commemorating the return of Indigenous land. In the English translation, the use of the personal pronoun "you" directly implicates the viewer and encourages them to reflect on their culpability in being on Aboriginal land. A notable aspect of the screen print is the choice of imagery utilised by Mackinolty. Mackinolty depicts Uluru through its unmistakable silhouette and places it as the central form in the Indigenous Australian flag. Since its creation in 1971, the Indigenous Australian flag has been represented as a visual symbol of Aboriginal identity. Mackinolty's collaging of the distinct Uluru imagery and the Australian Aboriginal flag represents land and Uluru as inextricable from Aboriginality. Languages and flags share a power to operate as symbols to unite and exclude. The Indigenous Australian flag with Uluru imagery, paired with an Indigenous text, frames the discourse surrounding the return of title for Uluru and Kata as an emphatically Aboriginal issue.
Mackinolty's representation of Aboriginality also stands in stark contrast to the representation of First Nations people by colonial artists that were previously celebrated by national art institutions. Such representations included the depiction of First Nations people as lawless, barbaric, and inferior. However, this work unabashedly displays Aboriginality through the imagery of the flag, a symbol of Indigenous pride, and the primary use of an Indigenous language. In putting First Nations people at the center of the conversation and as owners and creators of their own narrative, Mackinolty's work assertively commemorates and celebrates the place of Indigenous Australians on their own terms and on their own land.
In this artwork, Mackinolty utilises flat primary colours, personal pronouns "you", and in Sorcerian terms, a signifier of Aboriginal identity, the flag. Such techniques were popularised in posters used for political protests in 1970s Australia, as they allowed for impactful and effective visual communication. On the day of the handbag, Mackinolty's print was utilised as posters and worn on T-shirts by Indigenous Australians. The imagery of Uluru as central to our Aboriginal identity is strikingly clear, even when worn on a T-shirt.
The medium employed by Mackinolty of coloured inks and screen printing allowed for easy distribution onto various surfaces. The print run of this artwork approximated at 1,000. The artwork was able to be seen as flyers, posters and T-shirts on the day of the handbag. Importantly, the medium and the distribution of the artwork allowed for art to be consumed by audiences beyond the context of art institutions. The wider artistic movement of screen printing and widespread distribution was one that challenged notions of authorship and originality. It wryly provoked traditional art institutions' obsession with the original as being a unique creation produced through the hand skills of an artist. Interestingly, Mackinolty's prints have since been acquired by the National Gallery of Australia, the Museum of Contemporary Art, the Art Gallery of New South Wales, and various other leading art institutions across Australia.
Therefore, this combination of striking imagery and bold Indigenous text in Mackinolty's 1985 artwork reflects the connection between law and image and gives a voice to Aboriginal people in their ongoing fight for land title. There has been a very disappointing lack of progress on recognition of Indigenous land rights and reconciliation with First Nations people, in particular with the federal government's inaction following the release of the Uluru Statement from the Heart in 2017. The message of this artwork remains pertinent today, challenging the injustice that Aboriginal people have experienced, past and present, in receiving rightful recognition over their land.